Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of UAP Studies Podcast. We've been interviewing a lot of people lately from the TV world, television programs, things like that. And we wanted to get some perspective on, is there any infighting? I mean, there's competition, money involved in this. Do these guys all get
Hugely.
along, or are they just fighting with each other? So wanted to know about that. Also, this gentleman has had some very interesting perspectives on some famous sighting cases. So much to the point that there's more to it than we think, even though it's old information. And we even dive into things, hopefully, about poltergeists, demons, high strangeness. That seems to be more of a reoccurring theme more and more all the time. So today's guest is a 20-year veteran at this, very well spoken, big credentials behind him. Are you excited or what, man?
I'm really excited. It's going to be a great episode.
I'm really pumped. So let's get into it right now. Let's make it happen. Welcome back to UAP Studies for another amazing episode. I am Louis Borges. Joining me as always, my good friend and co-host, Jason Gilmet.
How's it going, my man?
It's going really well, buddy. Like you always say, any Sunday we get to chat about UFOs and weird phenomenon is a good day. So
absolutely,
it's easy to get jacked up, and we're glad to be back. I mean, we're coming on almost 100 episodes. This is episode 93. We're booked. I think we have another 6 booked. And then we have a big 100th anniversary, 100th episode anniversary special coming up planned. So maybe we'll wear some tuxedos, do some champagne or something, eh?
Something fancy. And
yeah. So our guest today is a very well-known figure. We got a lot of good feedback on Facebook. People were loving and liking the coming soon to UAP Studies. So we have a former MUFON multi-state director, an author, a researcher, and just an overall great guy, well-spoken. So we want to welcome to the show, Mr. John Ventre.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being on. You're very well known. And before we get into, your work and sort of, popular cases and things like that, tell us a little bit about yourself, what got you into UFOs and how that led into MUFON and that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, about myself, I was a executive at UPS and in the area of security and public affairs. And obviously nobody knew I was doing UFO stuff while I was there. But let me back up and how I got started, though. Differently than almost anybody I've ever talked to, is I had no interest in UFOs at all. I was 41 when I got involved in this field. I was a collector of famous monsters of Filmland, Fate magazine. I've got a horror cons, Comic Cons. I knew nothing about UFOs and had no interest at all in them. And then in 95, UPS, where I was working, sent me on an 18-month assignment all around the country. So, no, actually, I have to go even earlier than that. It was actually, I got divorced, and that gave me the time to look into some other things. So that's when I actually, I did that assignment around the country in 95 and 6, and I started writing my first book, which was, it was about the Mayan calendar and prophecies and end time prophecies and all of that. So I'm writing that, and I keep coming across different cultures talking about, star people on flying shields. And of course, I'm watching the X-Files because I love everything sci-fi and horror. And Sightings was actually one of my more favorite shows, than the X-Files. I said, I'm going to join this MUFON thing, and so I joined MUFON in 98. I knew nothing about UFOs. So I'm doing that for a couple of years. And to be honest with you, I kind of forgot I was a MUFON field investigator because nobody ever sent me any cases for probably 3 years, So I complained to James Carrion, and I said, what's going on here? I don't get any cases at all. And he says, well, you want to be a state section director? He gave me a bunch of counties around Pittsburgh. I said, okay. And it wasn't, I don't know, a month later, he goes, how about, I guess he looked at my profile head of security, multi-state security director. I had 3 states, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Virginia. So that kind of played along with MUFON, the way they have multi-state directors. And, and he said, hey, do you want to be the state director? And I'm not trying to throw the previous director under the bus. And I said, yeah. And so I took over MUFON, Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Then they gave me 5 more states. They gave me Delaware, Massachusetts, I can't even remember, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Vermont. I had 7 states.
Quite the workload.
Oh, yeah. But you know what I demonstrated? Same thing at work is that, and I know how to manage big groups, a lot of people, that type of stuff, is I got it all done. I mean, we were over 95% completed on all our cases. I got everything caught up. And you find other people. You can't do it yourself, obviously. I found the best people in each of those states, and I made them the, assistant state director, and just promoted people that, and then not hold them accountable, but just give them the cases and follow up, and we got it done. And I tell you, the Pennsylvania chapter a few years ago, it was up there in the top 5 all the time, and it was a great experience. But and I want to give you a little more of my background, then I'm going to come into this. So, the rest of my background is, I've written 10 books on 5 different subjects. They're not all UFOs. I think 5 of them was UFOs. And I started getting involved politically in the county here, ran for county commissioner, head of the county party. And I ran for governor last year. I campaigned for 8 months, and I can tell you that the newspapers deliberately slandered me, that I put my press release out, that I'm running for governor. They change it. Local resident, former head of a UFO organization, running for governor. I didn't say a word about UFOs. I honestly spent, I'd say, the first 5 months trying to convince the Pennsylvania media that MUFON was an unpaid hobby. I never got paid. I used it for research. It was an interest, obviously, but research to write those 5 books. And what? They were deliberately playing me as though I had no chance to win. Well, guess what? I put the best plan together of any of the candidates, and they started taking my bullet points, right? I participated in 4 debates. I won all 4. I beat the other candidates so bad in the second and third debate. When we got to the 4th debate, and there were 12 of us, only 4 showed up and 2 left before the debate started. Now think about that. These are the guys that want to be governor of the state. They didn't want to debate me. But my point being that, even though you think disclosure's coming, and, you got Dan Bongino and Tucker and Rubio and Jillian, all these Congress people talking about, this does not enhance you. If you want to get into a local race and stuff, and they know about this, they're going to use it to hurt you and use it against you. And it really took me first 5 months before they stopped talking about former head of a UFO organization and actually started talking about my platform and my resume. I was the only executive. So that's how I got, really, that's the background. That's how I got started and all of that. And then, so I joined MUFON in '98 after I was doing my research on that book. And, I guess I became the state director. It was 06 or 07. Probably beginning of 07 is when I became the state director. And then we get this huge UFO wave in 08. And that was like, boy, you talk about, it just propelled us into the media. And, you want me to tell you about that in 08?
Please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I'm getting, I read every report, obviously, and then I send it to the other state section directors or assistant directors. So I start seeing here in Pennsylvania some cases, and somebody sent this one to me when it all started. But to put it in order, there was some cases coming out of Lake Erie of objects coming out of Lake Erie in East Lake, Ohio. Ohio is not my area, but as they started showing up here, that's what I'm saying. Ohio sent me the information. Then and you follow it south. It's in Ohio. It's coming down Route 79. We're getting cases. It's in Wheeling, West Virginia. Then it's across the state. Like whatever's coming out is then turning and going across the state. You know, I got some cases that we got the case in Wheeling, and like 20 minutes later, there's a sighting in State College, Penn State, right? Same object, same description. Then it's coming across, almost following, some of them following the turnpike, and they're coming out in Philadelphia and Bucks County. So all of a sudden, it's probably April into May. Now, this is a state that averages 98 cases a year, let's say, under 100. We get 254 cases in a 3-month period. It was incredible, the amount of sightings. And I would say 70% of them was in the Bucks County, Philadelphia area. So, you know, we're working this. And at the time, you know, we're building the chapter up, and you know, we may have had 20 field investigators at the time, and Bob Gardner was in Bucks County, and he must have had 100 cases himself. So you know, we're working this, but MUFON headquarters calls and says, we're doing a TV show. And James Carrion called me, and he said, we got 2 cases, one in North Carolina, one in Mexico, and we need 1 more case, and yours is becoming big. I said, all right, we'll do that. So I wouldn't suggest bringing the media in the middle of an investigation. You want to get that stuff done first. But they were hugely helpful, because, you know, we try to do stuff and you got to pay for it yourself. You know, I'm in Pittsburgh, so I'm driving to Philly. That's 300 miles. And the tolls in this state are the second highest in the country. So they're not doing you any favors when you go across state, you know, but they paid for everything. So it turned out really good. So they said, give us your 2 best cases. And you may have seen these. They were on, I came up to Canada for Discovery Science, the Close Encounters show that was airing out of Toronto in Canada. We filmed up there a couple of years later. But this was the Discovery Channel and a new show called UFOs Over Earth. So they came in town, and I gave them the 2 cases, and it was the Denise case, the blonde lady that had the triangular craft, and it was dropping these metallic sprinkles into her tree in the backyard. They were probes. I don't know if you remember the case or not. So that one. And then we had Cliff, who was a retired contractor. And, you know, it's a retired guy living in, I don't know, it's like a $4 million, $5 million home and stuff. And he's saying, John, I've had 2 in particular encounters where I see a mothership. This thing is the size of an aircraft carrier. It as big as a football field, slowly coming in the sky. And in both cases with Denise and Cliff, the dog starts barking, and woke them up at like 3, 4 in the morning. And that's where they go to see what's going on. What's the dog so upset about? And so in Cliff's case, he sees this mothership, and that was in April. Then in May, it comes back, and they go outside, him and his wife, and there's a heat lightning storm. So the lightning is lighting up the sky, and he sees a 6-sided craft, and it's gigantic. It's taking up, you know, 2/3 of the sky. And it looks like it's a docking station where you got 6 triangular, like almost shaped like pizza. You know, they were long, you know, docked in a circle there. And he can see through the seams when the lightning flashes. He can see through the seams of it, you know. And then, you know, it seemed to then take off slowly. He goes, John, I don't know how it's staying up in the sky. It's moving 20 miles an hour. And it leaves towards the northeast. So Bob Gardner goes to the Philadelphia airport, and they clear him and they let him in. And he says, what do you have at this time? And they said, we had a large object with no transponder on the screen, and it went off to the northeast. It matched exactly what Cliff said. Then the thing was, how do we get the radar? And at the same time, this Discovery Channel's with us. They're making all these contacts and trying to get the radar and all of that. And what's funny is we filmed the Denise episode, and I'll tell you about that in a second. We filmed it first, and at the Cliff episode, no, excuse me, that was all done at the same time with Discovery. I'll tell you about UFO hunters next. We did Denise first and then Cliff, but so that all matched up. We couldn't get, by the time Discovery filming ended for that show, we were in the process of I was filing FOIAs, trying to get them in writing to say what they have. And the FOIAs were coming back. It was beyond the record retention period, and they had nothing. So I said, what's going on here? My guy went up to the tower and they showed it to him, and they won't give him any evidence. Now, the Denise case, there was about 4 times she went out, saw a triangular craft, and it had a light on each of the 3 sides. And one time it came close to the house and it dropped these metallic sprinkles into her tree. She said it looked like Christmas. The tree was lit up, right? And then they just got like a magnet. They got pulled back up. And I would say they were probes, is what they were. They got pulled back up into the tree. So she tells us, and this is where Discovery Channel was helpful. They paid for the labs to analyze it. So Bob cuts the leaves, some leaves off the tree. Then he takes other samples from other trees across the street, the other corner of the backyard, and we send it to the labs. Well, a couple of different labs. The one lab comes back and says the leaves were subject to high heat or radiation. Just her tree, not the others, right? And that produces a natural enzyme called anthocyanin. So here we got trace evidence, right?
Yep.
Then we sent it to another lab. She found something on the leaves, and that one turned out to be bird urine. So, but Linda Moulton Howe, I got her involved, and she was saying this lines up with a case she had in Nevada, but it didn't turn out to be the phosphorus on it didn't turn out to be what we thought it would be. So then the third lab looks at it, and they find high levels of boron on the leaves. And I said, well, boron, isn't boric acid in fertilizer? And they said, boric, we checked for boric acid. It's not boric acid, it's boron. So I look up, what's boron used in? It's used in stealth fighters. It's used to line it paints and enamels in nuclear reactors. Well, what is this doing on her tree? So yeah. I asked Denise, in your spice cabinet, do you have boron? Of course, she had no idea what I was talking about. She goes, what? Boron? What's that? But we had all this trace evidence on that tree, and so we got what we needed. But the Discovery Channel paid for those labs and all of that. So and that's the hard thing with MUFON. It was like, if we didn't have their help, I would have had the story, but maybe we would have gone to a local college then and asked them to look at the leaves. I don't think we would have had what we had. But so that show ended. And like I said, we had so many cases there that we investigated. So it's like a couple of months later now, Bill Burns contacts me, and he lives close by. He's only 10 miles. So he's following this in Bucks County. And he goes, John, we need you for a UFO and episode on UFO hunters. I said, yes, my favorite show. So I go out there and we meet him there, and we do the Denise case. And he does some different things, gets this, a police sergeant, and they do sketches. They interview all the people, and all the sketches were the same, that type of stuff. So he took a little different angle. But then the interesting thing is, I'm still trying to get the FOIA reports from the FAA, and they're lying to me, saying they don't have anything, right? So I get a call from the town. We did the Denise episode. We're still filming it. I'm driving down the turnpike to finish up the Denise episode. 3 weeks later, we're going to do Cliff. and I get a call from the Philly Tower saying, you can come up to the tower and interview us. So I called the producer of the show. John Greenwald was the producer, and he goes, wait a minute, let me call history. And they said, no, you can't, we're doing this one. You can't break off and start the second one. We're going to do that in 3 weeks. So I called that producer, Kevin Berry, and he goes, I'll get back to you. It's about a half hour later. He calls back. He goes, John, I got bad news. The New York FAA said, we're not allowed up to the Philly Tower. So they squashed it. I'm driving. I'm probably at Harrisburg at that point, and I'm moving on to Philly. I get another call 20 minutes later. Oops, sorry, John, the episode's been canceled. The episode was canceled, and that's the one that we had radar evidence for, right? But I keep pursuing this because I said, you know what? The woman at the tower there was helpful, in charge, the supervisor, whatever she was. So I keep talking to her, and I find out from MUFON, Glenn Schultz, I don't even know if he's still with us or not. He tells me the procedure on the radar. So I tell her, you got it. It's in a disk. It's in the file drawer. And, you know, if you ran an efficient office, you would be able to, you have it. It's not maybe right out in front of you, but you file it, right? So we get into it. She mails me the disk with the radar that the FAA is saying they don't have, right?
Oh, wow.
With a note that says, we run an official office, and I can't remember the exact wording, but here's the radar. So I take it, I send it to Glenn Schultz. He's able to pull, I think, 8 screens, 6 or 8 screens, and you have the green is the objects without a transponder, and there it is. It's on the screen, right? So we finally got it. So so then in her notes says we run an efficient office and all of that. And but Glenn said that the disk was corrupt. They taped over it before they sent us the disk. Now think about that. And her next note to me says, wow, I'm surprised you were able to get anything off that screen. Why would you say that when I told you?
They're just messing with you, man.
Yeah.
Oh, they didn't think we could pull it, is what it was. So I said, wow, what a reaction. And I have all of that. And I give a presentation on it. I kept it. I put it in my PowerPoint, you know. And so you sent me the disc, but you didn't expect me to get anything. And when I got the slides, you said, wow, I'm surprised you were able to pull anything off of that. Well, you copied over it thinking you crushed it, you know, and they removed some columns of information and all of that. But so I got all of those FOIA requests. I got the discs. I got everything to prove that the radar matched up. And in the Denise case, you know, we were able to prove that she had trace evidence on that. And, you know, that was so cool to get started in MUFON, be the state director. And a year later, you're on the Discovery Channel. And, you know, the producer, Sarah Kozak, we met with her and she goes, John, we're going international with this show. And we're going to, you know, we may need you. And I said, well, I got like 5 years to retire, and I got 6 weeks vacation, and I'm not quitting my job, you know. But it, you know, it turned out that the 3 episodes aired on Discovery, and the way it was presented, there was like almost like debunking. You know, what the producer of my episode did was bring another botanist on and dispute the anthocyanine, the way the leaves had holes in them, and it was like they gave both sides. They weren't trying to prove that this was alien. So it's like we're watching and I'm disappointed. So why are they doing that? Why are they bringing the skeptic in to say that this is not good? And then there was the episode down in North Carolina and the polygraph, and the guy failed the polygraph. So, you know, they do 3 episodes. The 3rd episode they air is North Carolina. I can't think of the guy's name now. And I think no, excuse me, that was the one he failed the polygraph. The 3rd episode was Mexico. And it was James Carrion and them launching Mylar balloons to see the reaction of the people, and they're getting all kinds of UFO reports. So it was a staged UFO. And us in the field who are true believers, are watching the show saying, what is this? And they got so many complaints that you didn't do the show right. Why did you do it this way? And, and I spoke to the camera guy, the producer, the director, I would say. And I said to him, do you believe UFOs are real? And he said, no. So, I mean, I got my answer. And Robert Wise was his name, Bob Wise. He did Unsolved Mysteries. I mean, he was a big name director. He did the Unsolved Mysteries show with Robert Stack and all of that. So I said, all right. So that's why it was presented as both sides were presented. It wasn't presented like this was factual. But, then I went on to Toronto. We did, I think, 3 episodes, Close Encounters. I did the Denise episode on 4 shows. And then I get a call in 2012, weeks before I'm retiring. So now I figure I'm emboldened. I can say anything I want, so because I'm retiring in a couple of weeks. They fly me to New York City. And, I grew up in New York. I grew up in Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, but I knew Manhattan. So they take me in there and I'm on the Anderson Cooper show now. I said, this is going to be cool. And Denise is there. And then there's 2 other girls from Kentucky who were abducted in a totally different case. So I'm there to defend the 3 women. And Joe Nickel is there, the Skeptic magazine skeptic on their board, right? And I didn't really know a lot about Joe. I know I had seen him before, but he is the main skeptic that's used. So they put me up against like the best, which didn't matter because I did very well against him. And and they didn't even tell me this until I'm there. But let me just digress 1 second. In 3rd grade in Flushing, Queens, I'm in 3rd grade with Fran Drescher, right? So I had no idea.
She was in your class.
Yeah, she was in Flushing, Queens in 3rd grade. So I have no idea who the guest is that's on before me. It had 15 minutes, right? And I had 45 minutes. So they got me mic'd up and then now it's commercial. Get in there. Who walks out? Fran Drescher. I said, Fran. My mind, like I was shocked. And she goes, oh, hi, how are you? And she kept going. And they're pushing me. But her and her husband had a UFO encounter. They believed they were abducted, took skin samples. They got those divots. And she's very outspoken. In hindsight, I should have said, Fran, turn around. I was in 3rd grade with you in Flushing. Come on back in. I need your help with these girls. We're going to defend them against the skeptic. What a show that would have been, but I didn't think to say it. I didn't know what I was getting into, that again, they were going to try to debunk the whole thing, right. So the bad thing with the Anderson Cooper show was it was pre-taped. And so they air it, I don't know, 10 days later, and I'm sitting there. I remember I went home for lunch. It was his daytime show, and I'm watching it at home. And I say, wait a second, I said this, I said that. They cut probably 70% of the good things I said, the intelligent things. The audience laughed at Joe Nickel. They cut the laughter out. When I said something about defending these women who show a lot of fortitude to come forward with their case, they all applauded. They cut that scene out. I brought up the case in O'Hare Airport, and the fact that he said it was a natural phenomenon where the ice comes through the clouds. I said, wait a second, 56,
and hovers above the tower.
Yeah, but it was 56 degrees that day. You can't have that ice falling through the clouds if it's 56 degrees. They cut so much out. Yeah. And it's kind of a shame because we held our own with Joe Nickel. And hey, I can say I was on the Anderson Cooper show, but it wasn't the best experience.
That's the problem with these shows, is that they edit it to follow their narrative, and it makes you look like the fool. Like even you were mentioning about running for governor, all of a sudden they're mentioning, oh, this guy believes in aliens.
Oh, that's
cue the music and make you look ridiculous, when in fact there's probably something actually there. We're not wasting our time. We're just
absolutely
ahead of the curve, right? So
we were way ahead of the curve. And I never questioned the witness. Well, I'll take that back. I was head of security. I was trained in body language, behavioral analysis, interviewing. I read your body as I'm questioning you to see if you're getting defensive, that type of stuff. But and we're able to prove maybe 5, 6, 8% or made up. And the best way on an interview is they're describing what happened, and you ask them what happened next. What happened next? If all of a sudden they can't remember and you could see that they're making stuff up, they're making it up, Yeah. But I would say, on at least 80% of the cases, they experienced what they experienced, and like I said, on our cases there in Bucks County, we got radar and we have trace evidence, and I got all the reports and a really good, PowerPoint to show step by step that those were 2 real cases.
And again, you're also very well known for your appearances on Hangar One, the UFO files. That was a very good series. And for those that don't know, it was basically the MUFON files, and they would reenact these really popular cases. So what we thought we would do at some point today is bring up some popular cases, not to drone on about them forever. Everybody knows what they're about, but just to get your opinion, right? And we chatted briefly.
Let me first comment on Hangar One.
Yeah, get into that.
The main thing with Hangar One was that we had a case file for every one of those cases. Yeah. And this is totally different than Ancient Aliens, right? Where, to me, that a lot of that stuff is, supposition. They're making stuff up. They're substituting aliens for angels in the Bible. There's a lot of, you can't prove anything that they say, very little, right? But we had a case file on every one of them. And you got to remember the way this thing flowed. The UFO files were on for 3 years with Bill Burns, right? Then it was UFO Hunters. Maybe Bill Burns wasn't in that or made some appearances. Then 3 years of UFO Hunters with Bill Burns, right? Then Ancient Aliens came out in 2010. So it had already been 3 years of Ancient Aliens. We were told if Hangar One's successful, we would then be the new show and Ancient Aliens is gone. And the producer, Paul Villadeloid, absolutely believed that. And he kept saying to us in the second season, this is the important season. If we do well in the second season, we get the third season and everybody gets paid properly, which is one of the reasons they don't go 10 years with shows, because you start paying big bucks to the people in it because they become celebrities. So I said, okay. So I'm watching, pulling up the ratings and stuff. We're averaging 1.5, 1.55 million viewers. Ancient Aliens is barely breaking 1 million, a lot of times under 1 million. So we got them by a third, and they're on at 9, we're on at 10, which is the tougher hour to draw. I said, we're in like Flint, So we're done with season 2, and we're waiting to hear about season 3. We got notified that they dropped Hangar One. I said, how is that possible? We got 500,000 more viewers. Put us on at 9. Put Ancient Aliens on at 10, and we would easily draw in over 2 million people, because that was a good show. And their answer was, although you're drawing more, the people that are watching your show are over 46. The people watching Ancient Aliens are under 46, and marketing wise, they spend more money. So we're sticking with that because the commercials will pay more. So that's what it was about.
Business decision.
Yeah, business. But again, if you had put us on at 9, we would have got the younger people, because, at the time, and even now, I'm divorced, I'm single. 10 o'clock on a Friday night is when I head out. So, but people were staying around to watch our show, so I don't know. I thought that was kind of unfortunate. And, I really stopped watching Ancient Aliens when they said Da Vinci was an alien. So, and that's what I mean. There's so many things in that show that I don't know.
Season 8, that was really the last season for me, was season 8. Yeah. After that, I just stopped watching it.
Da Vinci's an alien. I said, what?
Did aliens create rocks?
Yeah. Well, you know what I used to do at my conferences? I run the 3 here in Erie, Pittsburgh, and Philly. And I used to make fun of Giorgio a lot. I would take my glasses and say, see this? This could not have been made by humans. This was made by aliens.
That's the issue with this field, right? Everybody, as crazy as the reach is, even though we think we're based on more facts and we've read more legitimate things, because there's no hard, steadfast evidence that hasn't
Absolutely.
been dumbed down or censored or sequestered away, nobody can really disprove anything. So they get an equal plate at the table, unfortunately, in some cases. And because there's grains of truth in a lot of it as well, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So, you know, we have our internal opinions. We talk to a lot of people. You know, we see the world of commenting on UFO Twitter and Facebook and everything else. So we think we know what's what. But I mean, you got guys like George Knapp that used to think it was only this way and then humbly change their mind and say, yeah, I've been schooled. I really didn't know anything.
Let me tell you one more quick story before we get into some cases. My friend out in Minnesota, and I can't think of his name now.
What kind of friend is that? You don't even remember him.
You know, I haven't talked to these guys in a while. I retired from the UFO field 5 years ago. But yet everybody pulls me back in. I'm on a radio show now every Tuesday night. I'm here.
We didn't forget about you, bro. That's why you're here.
I wrote more books. I still run the conferences for the PA chapter, even though I retired. But he does the first ancient alien conference in the country. And the History Channel is there. So the cast of Ancient Aliens is there in Minnesota in 2012. And I think myself and maybe one or two other people were not cast members, but everybody was there except David Childress, Giorgio Van Daniken, all of them are there. The other guy, I can't think of his name anymore. The one that passed away, he was like 40 something, and all of a sudden he got some glandular disease and he passed away. I don't know if you remember the guy. He kind of had a beard and almost like a French name, but he had been on the show for.
Is his name Jason?
Oh,
Joking.
I wish
I'm 40 something. Oh God.
Yeah, my memory was better. But so I'm doing the show and I meet Giorgio, and of course I get a autograph from him. Even though at the time I'd been on the Anderson Cooper show, I'd been on a couple of TV series, so I get his autograph and I said, "Hey, I run these conferences in Pittsburgh and Philly primarily, and we'd like to have you come." He goes, "All right, I'll talk to you. I'll speak for you, right?" So we're doing the conference. And Ian Pundit is the narrator, right, and moderator. And there was a couple of questions in a row that people would ask Giorgio, or the Ian would ask. And there was one with those discs that were found in China, and Giorgio says nobody knows where they are right now. So Ian says, "John, what do you think about that?" And I said, "Well, wait a second. Those discs were taken to Russia. And in the grooves of the discs, they found information, like almost you could play it on a Victrola, but there was information in those grooves. So they're up in Russia." Well, Giorgio then gets really annoyed and says, "Well, like I said, nobody knows where they are right now." So that happened on about 3 different questions that were asked, right? So and this is a true story, after the conference was done, Giorgio came up to me and said, "I want to tell you something. I will never, ever do a conference for you." I said, "Okay." And he never did. He never came to our conference, so.
Do you think it's that people don't want their glass house shattered, or they want to be the only opinion and don't add or don't cut me off? Is it an ego thing, or what do you think that's from?
I've had everybody at my conferences, Travis Walton, Nick Pope, everybody in the field except for the Ancient Alien people. And with him in particular, it's ego. It is the biggest. He's like Tom Cruise ego. I've never seen anything like it in a human being, But and that's my opinion. If you ask me, most conferences I go to, I don't charge a speaking fee. I really don't. If they offer me a couple $100 or $2, I say, all right. I got to park my car. I got to drive to the airport. I've never asked more than $200 to speak anywhere. And I base that on the size of the conference. There's a lot of small conferences. I know they're not making a lot of money. I speak for free, even now, But the Ancient Alien guys started asking Childress, $1,500. I said, "Come on, David, we do the whole event and only make 2,000, and I'm going to give you 1,500. I'm a better speaker than you, so I don't need you. I'll speak again." That type of stuff. So I don't know. I think it's kind of ego with some of that stuff. But, I'm not in this for the money, never been in it for the money. I spent more money running around on investigations and helping other people with conferences there's no money in this. I published 10 books and I'm lucky I broke even.
We had similar decision to make too. Like for all of our viewers on our YouTube channel, I hope you notice there's no commercial when you click our video, and there isn't one in the middle, and there isn't one at the end either. And I'm also not sponsoring coffee or jeans or pest
Starbucks.
We could take the money, but and there will come a time where it will only be feasible if we're into that, I think, because it is a full-time job in addition to our lives, our families, and everything else, right? But we've chosen to not go that route instantly. And just as soon as you can monetize, bang, let's start getting subscriptions. We're at the level now where we could probably get a decent buck for what we do, but we feel like that's almost a bit of a sellout. We've had people that we've asked come on the show and they're like, yeah, well, due to my contract with my agent, I got to charge $1,000. Like, what are you, a neurosurgeon?
For 1 hour.
Or not even. Some of these episodes are 45 minutes long. So
and I tell those people, thanks, but no thanks. And
and so do we.
I was so much a believer in this that we have to find out, because this is the biggest question in humanity, I think, that, with MUFON, I was on their board for 3 years. It was they called it like a temporary board member. And I'm telling you, the finances in 2010, 11, maybe 09, when we had the housing crisis, I guess was then in 08.
Yep.
Their finances were in the toilet. I donated $13,000 to MUFON. It was a tax write-off because they're a nonprofit, so it counts. But, I felt good about that. I said, I'm helping them stay afloat. And, I was probably in those 2 years, their biggest donor, and then they were able to recover. And now I understand they're doing very well.
And that's why even having joined MUFON several years back, and some people are really upset about, sometimes they have an investigation and the investigator comes back with, their basically what happened on the certain events, that took place, their reports and all that. They don't understand it comes out like we're not funded. There's no money coming in. They're not going to buy they're not paying for the fuel. They're not paying for the equipment that we need. They're like, you need a to-go bag. Well, to-go bag is a lot of junk in there, and that's all costly, right? So yes, you might not agree with the end result that your MUFON investigator has for your case, but keep in mind that he, she, or they, with these days you got to say that you got to you don't know what their expense, how much money they can spend on your case, right? If it's a cattle mutilation, go nuts. I'll probably spend several. At least $1,000 on that investigation, but just for something's floating in the sky, like no, it costs money to do this.
But I tell you what, though, with the conferences we did, I paid for the first conference we did in Montgomery County, and the first conference I was smart about this. We got this case in Bucks County. It's getting it's in all the newspapers. It's on the TV news, right? The TV show airs in November. So January, I run a UFO conference there. Do you know how many people showed up? 600.
Are you serious?
Biggest conference I ever did in my life. We charged $10. I paid to rent the science hall at the Montgomery Community College. I bought the screen, the projector, brought my laptop. I funded that stuff. And we made $6,000 because it was $10 to get in. Bill Burns, David Jacobs, and myself were the speakers. We made $6,000 on that. And we had gotten up to almost $30,000 from our conferences. And we were then able to reimburse investigators and fund stuff and send things off to labs for reports and all of that. So, but that's how you do it. And, and I had a public television. I'm at an event in Pittsburgh, and some guy walks up to me and says, hey, I've seen you on television with Hangar One and all of that. We have a public TV show. And he says, would you come in and do some half-hour episodes for us? And we air it on Pittsburgh Channel 11 TV at night. And I said, yeah. I said, and I didn't get paid for any of this. So now I'm driving into Pittsburgh, paying tolls and gas and all of that. And I named the show UFOs Over Pittsburgh, which was cool. And I'm able to Skype people in. We had Travis, we had everybody on the show, and it was free and it was on TV. I never got paid, but I said, you know what? We'll get more investigators and more people at the conferences. And when I retired as state director in 2012, we had 178 subscribers. We had 43 investigators. And I think about that when, 10 years earlier when I took it over, I'm lucky I had a dozen investigators, and now we're at 43. We really built this state up, but that's how you do it. But I want to segue into one other thing before you start that, because since we're talking about funding. So, I'm on the board of MUFON, and all of a sudden we are told that Robert Bigelow wants to get involved, and he will fund our investigations. And this is like 2009. So again, it's right there with the TV show, and I had just gotten state director 2 years earlier. And I meet the guy. We have the symposium, I believe it was in Denver, and there's billionaire Robert Bigelow. And I'm having a vodka, and I drink the vodka gin martinis like James Bond.
Nice.
Yeah,
shaken, not stirred.
That's right. Yeah, and so we have here's this billionaire. He don't know me from anybody, and we had like a 20-minute conversation about colonizing Mars. It was really cool. But still, again, with people, you start getting, what's Bigelow getting out of this, and what's going on with this? And all I knew is that if we had an investigation, you submit an expense report. If you had to stay in a hotel, if you had it, and they had to authorize it first, if you had to rent a car, gas, and they're reimbursing you. I said, this is the way it should be. We need that kind of funding. And I don't remember the exact figures. $700,000 is what Bigelow put up for a year to do these investigations. And of course, then you get people, the crazies. What's Bigelow getting? Is it being compromised? Is he taking all the reports? Is he getting, all he wanted to do for $700,000 was read the report. He wanted to see it first. And if there was anything there for that would describe the propulsion, anything that he could use, because he's building those pods in his hotel,
right,
in the atmosphere there, he wanted the information. I thought it was the best thing. And that whole thing just kind of de-evolved into finger pointing and James Carrion. He goes on vacation, he comes back, he's fired as MUFON international director. I thought Carrion was a good guy. They said, well, he didn't report something, right? I don't, the whole thing just, and then people on the board and other people, state directors pointing fingers, and the whole thing fell apart.
The minute money gets involved, everything falls apart. And Bigelow is one of those guys that we always think like, oh, if I was a billionaire, I would spend money on investigating UFOs. Well, that's exactly what he's doing, right? So it's not like it's a secret thing. The guy's got the money to spend on it. Let him spend it.
And I'll tell you something else. This is my opinion. What you're seeing right now with the Pentagon, with all of that, they might put Tom DeLonge out as the front man and Elizondo. I guarantee you, in the background, Bigelow's involved in this.
Makes sense, right from Skinwalker Ranch onwards. Absolutely. He's never really left. It would make sense.
I am 99.9% certain that Bigelow's in the middle of this, and because he wants that technology or something. That's going to help him with that space station that he's got up there, hotel thing. But I guarantee you he's behind that, so.
Well, it's a race to the patent for this crazy science. Like even Elon Musk and everybody, we're trying to go from burning fossil fuels to using, antimatter as propulsion. Right. So whoever gets it right first wins. The Monopoly game is over when you land on the Park Place with a hotel. You're done.
It's huge. So it's huge. I'm looking at Motor Trend, and I love the Hummer, and it's electric now, so I don't have to worry about 8 miles per gallon. If I say, I just go snowmobiling, I'm not certain I could take that electric Hummer up in the mountain.
Well, here's a caveat to that. I also work in the automotive business. We both do, and we viewed one of the new Hummer electrics. It was at the facility we were at, and this unit sold for $245,000 US. It weighs 10,000 pounds. It feels like the equivalent of 1,000 horsepower when you nail it. But the whole idea, if you look at how much pollution was made mining the lithium to make those batteries,
I know.
You'd have been if it just burned gas the rest of its life, the next 20 years, it would do the planet a bigger favor.
And $29,000 to replace the batteries.
You're not saving the planet by buying electric cars. I hate to tell people that. I ruffle people's feathers.
But that's what they're doing. California said they're not going to produce gas vehicles.
Same in Europe, 2030. You can't sell gas. I think North America.
Well, they don't have any gas. They got to get it from Russia.
Yeah, that's a whole other show in itself here.
Everybody's riding bikes, the e-bikes.
That's
what needs to happen. Again, ask me about cases.
Let's get into some cases. This is viewer requested, so that's why I'm like, I got to get it done, man, or I'm going to get my head ripped off.
We're going to go 2 hours here.
Social media. Hey, if we go and it's good content, we keep this baby running.
Okay.
So we'll start with the easy one, and I know you're polarized on this one, so we don't want to beat it to death. But Roswell, New Mexico, yay or nay?
Okay, it's a nay, and I'll tell you why. And Nick Pope actually now is mimicking my logic, because I had him in Philly, and I said to the crowd what I believed about Roswell. He now is saying it on TV. But Roswell, in 1936, there was a UFO crash in the Black Forest of Germany. We ended up getting all of that with Operation Paperclip. We got all of them. We didn't know what we had. Hitler didn't know what he had. That's why he tried the Die Glock and all these other things he was trying to do. My belief is that the Roswell crash was hours experimentation, trying to get the anti-gravity to work, and it crashed there. Now, as far as the bodies go, maybe there was an issue with weight. Maybe they were, dwarves, midgets. I don't know. But I would hate to think that they were some human experimentation. But when you look at what Hitler did and what the Japanese did to the Chinese in Unit 231, experimenting on people, and we continued some of that stuff with the Tuskegee Airmen and other
MK Ultra,
all of good point. All of that. Who knows what the bodies were? But in my opinion, it was not alien. That was our technology.
And that makes sense, because the initial headline, it was the Army captures flying disc. That was an Army disclosure. So if it was a secret Air Force project, there might have been some not good cooperation. That just because it's an Air Force project doesn't mean every other faction of the military gets that insider info. It's compartmentalized. So.
And then they pulled it all down 2 days later. And,
said it was a weather balloon.
Sorry, we didn't get nuked on Wednesday. That was a lightning strike. Sorry, it didn't happen.
This took us 2 days, but it's tinfoil.
Okay, so we're a nay on Roswell. So now, a very polarizing subject. What are your thoughts on Bob Lazar, Area 51, S4? Because that kind of comes from that. Like, we didn't know Area 51 existed until George Knapp got the story of Bob Lazar and released it, right?
Yeah. No, I think Lazar saw what he saw. And but again, is it alien or is it ours? Because you're talking now, what's that, 1989 or so with Bob Lazar? And we've had this technology to an extent for 40 years at that point.
Sure.
And I think Lazar saw that craft and stuff. Absolutely. And people say, well, he falsified his college credentials. I mean, how many people have? I think a lot of people apply for jobs and they exaggerate their college credentials and their resume and a lot of things. So I think he saw what he saw. But my belief is that probably around 1980, we finally broke through and we have a real space force. Trump did not create it in 2018 or 17, whenever he said he created the Space Force. That has been there since the early 80s. And when I look back at the old cases, actually, if you look it up, 1982, there's a Space Force involved with satellites, let's say. That's what the job was. But I look at the, what's the case? Hudson Valley. From Christmas of 83 for, I don't know what that was, 7 years.
6 years was the flap.
7,000 reports and witnesses. And it's like blatant and nobody is investigating it. This thing's hovering over a nuclear reactor and you don't have the Air Force flying in there. That was ours. They were testing it, probably built it somewhere up there in upstate New York. They're flying it and testing it. I'm convinced that Hudson Valley and the Phoenix Lights is our technology. Those are ours. And that's why I say, like Lazar saw what he saw, and maybe half of all the cases ever reported is ours. Maybe the Tic Tac stuff is our secret space force that they're not telling you about. They're not telling you everything about it, but those are really ours. You know, it's interesting. I had a cousin, quick story. Two of my cousins went to the Air Force Academy in the mid 70s, right? And I would ask them, you know, the physics 370 book at the Air Force. I don't know if you know about this. Chapter 33 is on UFOs and the threat, right? So I said, when you were at the Air Force Academy, did you see that? And it was only there from 68, 69, and 70. They went to the Air Force Academy like mid 70s. They said, no, I never said anything about that. But interesting though, we're at dinner one time. My cousin Frank is a 2-star Air Force general. My other cousin, I don't want to use his name, is NSA, right? So in the car, I was telling Frankie about all these UFO cases and NASA and all these things, all the evidence. So he brings it up at dinner, says, hey, tells his brother, cousin Johnny is saying this, and he's laughing and says, what do you think about that? And the NSA guy says, yeah, I believe that. You had to see my Air Force cousin's jaw like this large. Like, what do you mean you believe that? You know, but he did tell me one thing, and I could say it now because he passed away last January. He said, John, I can tell you this. We have, you know, it's almost like that guy who told Jan Harzan from Lockheed, whatever, that we can go to the stars. He said, John, you don't have to worry at night. We have stuff that China and Russia, no idea, so advanced, you can sleep good at night. And, you know, unfortunately, he passed away at 65 about 18 months ago. But that's why I say I think that the Lazar stuff, that's ours. Phoenix Lights is ours, and Hudson Valley was ours. And we have already been to every planet in the solar system. I believe that 100%.
So do you think there's an accountability, though, on that, to have that sort of technology to scare the crap out of the population? Not only that, but let's say if it is American technology, they're flying it over Canada, they're flying it over Europe, they're flying it everywhere without basically asking for permission to be in their airspace. So there is some repercussions to having this sort of advanced technology if we do possess it, because there's accountability at this point. Some people are getting radiation poisoning from it. They're getting these weird diseases from approaching these crafts.
Right.
You know, so there is an accountability there, isn't there?
Well, I would say to you, do you think they care? The answer is no. And I give you an example. Not Betty and Barney Hill. The two that were in Texas in 1980, where the two ladies and the kids stayed in the car, and the one
mentioned
lady,
that the last episode. Yes.
Cash Landrum, right?
Yeah.
That was absolutely ours. 1980, we're testing a nuclear reactor on this thing. It's being followed by helicopters. Like what? Helicopters not going to, it's not going to shoot the thing down. This is ours. Flies right over the lady. They get radiation poisoning. They remove the road.
And they won a lawsuit. It's the only time anyone's ever successfully sued and won for damages.
And I'll give you another example that they don't care. And this may be one of your cases you want to talk about, is Kecksburg, because it's 7 miles from me. So I don't know if that's one.
Oh yeah, I got Kecksburg right here. The little acorn bell-shaped thing.
Yeah, we don't have to go in chronological order. Unfortunately for the UFO fans in PA locally, I hooked up with an engineer in 2015, and we went step by step over everything the witnesses said. And his theory was that Kecksburg was a spy satellite. After the Gary Powers U-2 capture of his plane, we still needed to spy on Russia. Yeah. So, and this is an absolute fact, what we started doing was launching capsules. They were 5.5 feet tall, 5.5 feet wide, and it looks just like a space capsule. We launched them out of the South Pacific by Johnson Island. So they would go over, the Earth would spin, they take pictures of Russia, come back around, eject the camera system, we'd pick it up. Now, my point is not to debunk Kecksburg, but I think that's actually what crashed in Kecksburg, and I can tell you all about it. But they would pick up the camera system. The capsule would land in the water and sink. It has an atomic generator on it. And there are hundreds of them that sunk to the bottom of the Pacific.
Yeah.
Nobody cared about the radiation. So when it comes to the government, and look, I love America, I am love it or leave it. I want my freedoms, and and people need to be where they succeed on their own and not with government handouts and stuff. But, when it comes to the government, they're going to do what they're going to do. And there isn't accountability, and there's no concern for human life, very little, because if they can get away with it, like Hitler did with his experiments with Mengele, like the Japanese did with their experiments on the Chinese. And we've done this stuff too with MK Ultra. To get the technology and be the most powerful country is job one. I wrote a book once for the opening scene. I don't remember which book. I've written 10, but we have an encounter with Iran, and they back engineered the 1976 case. Remember the UFO?
Yep.
Al-Jarari, whatever the guy's name was, where he couldn't fire, it locked up his weapons.
Yeah.
And then, but it crashed. That UFO. It went down. So is a novel I wrote. They back engineered it. So they're now, that's why they're so bold, the Iranians, right? So in this novel I wrote, it was an opening, I know the book, it's the Apophis 2029 is the book, set in the year 2029. They challenge us, but they don't know we already have back engineered it, and we have an encounter over the Atlantic. And that was just the opening of the book.
The interesting thing too is that acorn or bell-shaped capsule that was seen apparently had some weird glyph type hieroglyphs. But I mean, think about it. If you come from a small place and you've never seen Arabic writing or Cyrillic or, any type of a Middle Eastern culture, that would look like, man, that's alien writing for sure. What the hell is that? It doesn't look anything like the lettering systems that we're accustomed to. Yeah. So it's plausible that it was not alien writing. It could have been writing from another culture right here on our own planet, right?
Let me tell you a little bit about Kecksburg. So we went into that, and those capsules were first sent to England. They were going to be used there. They were also capable of carrying atomic weapons or nuclear weapons at that time. Or maybe they were atomic in 65, right? And then they were shipped back. And so the engineer says, look, there had to be some writing. There had to be something that they put around it. But one of the things we found was one of the witnesses on the writing. So there's some scribbling and all stuff, but there's a 5-pointed star, your regular 5-pointed star on it in a circle.
Yeah.
That's an Air Force Army symbol in the United States. And that's on the base with the other writing. So that told me those were military, right? So then the witnesses are saying, well, when it's coming down over Canada and Detroit, it changes direction. I find a manual from the Air Force, a general's statement stating there's a weight and balance system there. They can send a radio signal. It tilts the weight, and off of the heavy air, we can change the direction and land it within 100 yards of where we want it to.
So it doesn't crash into a city or kill somebody, right?
And where was this thing headed? Straight at Cleveland and Pittsburgh. So they changed it a little bit, and we're 30 miles southeast of Pittsburgh, so it didn't hit the city, right? So that's explained. It had a copper alloy heat shield, which glows green because it's copper, right? People saw it glowing green coming in. They said 4 NASA guys were there carrying a large box, probably a lead box because it had an atomic reactor. They were in radiation suits. They saw blue arcing in the woods. Well, they're cutting the thing open to get the generator out of it. They can't drive it down Route 30 here with leaking radiation all over the turnpike. We explained every single part of that. So, as much as I love a good story and I like all of these to be true, I think Kecksburg was the spy setup. But get this, Unsolved Mysteries does their investigation. The Sci-Fi Channel does their investigation. Nobody can locate one military officer that was there. All we got is these statements and stuff. So we write the paper up, It's the cover of the Pittsburgh, not the cover, the living section cover of the Pittsburgh Tribune, Post Gazette. That reporter was in the military, puts it on Stars and Stripes, right? And then I get contacted from a guy up in Maine. He says, my neighbor was the guy who headed up the investigation. He would tell us all the time. So he gave us the name. We looked the guy up. We found the Army officer that headed up the Kecksburg recovery retrieval. So we did what nobody else was able to do. We identified who he was.
So do you think that any of these cases, like the Betty Barney Hill, for instance, was that human-related technology? Is that something that kind of borders into the sort of the gray area? And it's kind of pun intended there, but there were little gray men. Do you think that the phenomenon of abduction is something that is currently ongoing?
Yeah, I think so. But the thing has changed. I believe the Betty and Barney Hill, I believe mostly, my biggest belief is Travis Walton. Good friend of mine. I was talking to him about an hour before I got on the show. I believe his case. He's passed 5-6 polygraphs.
Yeah.
But let's see, that was in the 70s. No, that couldn't be our technology. Even though he did run into these officers that he thought were ours.
Yeah.
They looked like Schwarzenegger. They were big, muscular Nordics.
And, you need to come with us now.
Yeah, you better. They took him and put the gas mask on him and knocked him out. But those are all good. But it's a strange thing. This abduction thing. So I got a whole different view now on the abduction thing. I agree with Dr. David Jacobs. I don't agree with Kathleen Martin. And there's a segment of the UFO field with Ray Hernandez and that free organization. And, I don't want to say they've become liberal, but, they think the alien abduction's a good thing. It's good to get abducted. It's positive in your life. I remember telling Ray Hernandez, if it's so good, offer your grandkids up for an abduction. It's got to be better than public school, but every case prior to the last 5 years, let's say, over 90% of the abductions has been negative. Even Jacques Vallée said it has all the markers of paganism and that type of stuff. And I think I took Kenneth Ring's research where he compared near-death experience and alien abduction. And I then read all the books on exorcism and hauntings, and I compared his research to demonic infestation. There's about a 70% overlap in the alien abduction to a demonic case, 70%. And I think I was telling this to somebody recently. Oh, I'll tell you, when I ran for governor, I became friends with the Pittsburgh militia. The militia guys with ARs, right?
Yeah.
I became, because somebody went after them, one of the other candidates. I came to their defense. They're not starting any trouble. These guys come to our political events and provide free security. I became real good friends with them. So we were discussing this. And I just lost my train of thought. What was we just discussing?
About the alien abductions.
Okay, yeah. So you got a 70% overlap with the demonic stuff. So in my mind, there's been a change here. David Jacobs has always felt it was very negative. They were here for hybridization. And they've gone 4 or 5 generations now, let's say, since the 40s, and they've infiltrated government. They've infiltrated CEOs of corporations. I mean, the Google guy looks like Data to me, right? The guy in charge of Google. But think about it, in this country, the changes here are happening so quickly in the U.S. Almost they're being orchestrated. And of course, I think it's Soros and that type, but something is changing our culture here very quickly. But so I looked at it and I said, look, Carla Turner, if you're familiar with her cases, where she was abducted, her husband, her son, all 3 had the same dreams. Windows rattling, doors rattling. You could hear something walking with nails and claws. And I'm reading this saying, how is this alien? How is this an alien thing? The son becomes almost possessed. He's in a parking lot with his girlfriend and he's trying to get her out from under the street lamp. Come over here in the dark. I have somebody for you to meet. The whole thing was absolutely creepy. And matter of fact, her last book, she said some remark about, if you think these are aliens or angels, and I can't remember the name of the book, Destiny of Angels, whatever she called it. She says this is a complete trick, and the more you look at Valet, even Hynek said this is interdimensional. Valet and Keel all say that this is demonic. And if there's time at the end, I'll tell you about my one and only.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's do it. Let's do it right now. We're right on that same
here
subject.
We go. This is going to change the whole show on you.
All right.
And this is really interesting. I joined MUFON in 98, right? So in 99, I go to the first symposium because it's close by. It's in DC, Northern Virginia. I drive, it's only 200 miles. So I drive there, I go to the symposium. It's great. I meet all these people. I'm loving it, right? And I get home. The next 4 nights were nothing but a haunting. Lucid dreams. There is something, a presence in my room. And in my opinion, this is not alien. I'm seeing this creature standing next to me. I'm waking up every hour, swinging my fist because I know it's right next to me. I hit the headboard, the post, almost broke my wrist. I have an out-of-body experience where I'm floating over the house. I see my green Grand Cherokee parked there. And for a second, I said, touch the peak of the roof. The peak of the roof was right there. And I was saying, touch it. I don't know if I woke up, I might have fell. I don't know what would happen. But, then I see these 2 hybrid kids, right? They're there. And I have Dobermans. I always have. My Doberman's floating in the air horizontally. His legs are sticking out. This kid's poking him, right? And I'm yelling at the kid, stop poking the dog. And, and I think back on it, I couldn't see anything else in the room. It was like a beige color. I couldn't see furniture. I couldn't see anything but the kid turns around. He's got big bug eyes, hair plugs, gigantic forearms, like twice the size of mine. The bone is like sticking out on the end of the forearm, like some genetic mutation, and he has no shirt on and he's the creepiest looking thing. Then there's another kid standing next to him in looked like Nosferatu. Hair was pulled back, and I'm talking 12-year-old kids, had like a rat face with the teeth. Hair was slicked back, wearing like a black outfit, like the vampire, like Nosferatu. This is the weirdest stuff. So here I am. I joined MUFON, but my girlfriend jumps on the UFO site, and she says, John, the night you got home, there's a UFO sighting in Penn State and in Morgantown, West Virginia. Your house is in direct line of those 2 sightings. So I don't know what this thing is, but to me, it was very paranormal. Could have been UFO, right? The time, a lot of Thanksgivings, I have some sort of poltergeist paranormal activity. And it's when my kids are here. I get them for Thanksgiving. My ex got them for Christmas. But it wasn't, I'm a high-level executive and I'm really busy and I'm on 5 boards of charities and stuff. But things would happen and there were witnesses and other people and my kids and my girlfriends. And they would say, what is this? And then nothing happens for 18 months, 2 years, 3 years. So real quickly, it escalates. And more things start happening, paranormal things. We hear walking in the hallway. There's a handprints like this on my bathroom mirror, 4 inches longer than my arm. I'm 6 feet. That puts it 7 feet. Has 6 fingers. I have it on video, the mirror, and a Polaroid, right? My kids start telling me about stuff that happened in our Jersey house. And this is all haunting stuff. Voices in the wall. A rocking chair in the spare bedroom and a baby crying. My girlfriend at the time tells me the same thing, and she never talked to my daughter. My daughter didn't tell me about that until years later. We moved to New Jersey, and all the boxes are sliding around. From Oklahoma, we went to New Jersey. The boxes are sliding around the garage floor. You can hear them sliding. My father comes over and says, John, what is that? Said, I don't know, Dad. The moving boxes slide around the floor. All of this stuff. But then it starts to escalate. And my daughter has an experience. They're sleeping over and she gets attacked by shadow people. They're all around her bed. One presses into her body, right? And she hears them all talking. And it's the one in the doorway says, when you're done with her, I want to try out the other two, meaning my son and his fiance in the next room. She wouldn't have made that wording up. There's another time where I wake up at 5 a.m. and my bed sits where I could see right down the hall. There's somebody standing there. And I'm looking and, I'm rubbing my eyes, smacking my face. What is this? There's a guy standing at the end of the hallway. He's backlit. And it's at the door for the attic, right? He's above the door frame, but he has a square head. I'm saying, is he wearing a helmet? Is this alien? The thing had about a 12-inch waist. It was so small and slender and long arms and legs and a square head, but I can't make out features because it's backlit, right? So I crawl to the footboard. We're 20 seconds into this at least, right? I see him. I said, okay, you're taking kickboxing. Step over the footboard, charge him and hit him as hard as you can. As soon as I thought that, this other voice in my head says, you don't want to do that. That could be unsafe. You want to step off the bed and turn the light on. Of course, I go do that. He's gone, right? And I go, my Doberman is sleeping in the hallway at the top of the stairs. I walk past him. He don't wake up. So I go down the hallway, look for footprints. There's nothing there. I go back to bed. I look at him. He's sound asleep. You can't walk past the dog with him not acknowledging you and waking up. But I'm thinking like the alien stuff, the husband's sleeping and the wife is taken, that type of thing. Yeah, I mean, that's one instance. There were just so many of these things. And then in 2014, it escalated into what I just consider a very demonic encounter. 20th anniversary of my divorce. And I'm sitting watching the baseball game. I have a 108-pound Doberman. He is laying on my legs. There's a sonic boom on the wall. Boom! We both turned, so the dog heard it. The pictures flip up on the wall. The one picture flips up, and there's 2 Indian headdresses, and the feathers blow to the side. And the dog saw it because he reacted exactly with me. I go upstairs, and there's this smell in the hallway, like a column, like rotting flesh. I step back, I don't smell it. I step forward, I smell it. So I put the bathroom fan on, I finish the game, I go to bed, it's still there, right? And again, in my bathroom, boom, the dog sleeping on that little chair at the footboard. Him and I both turn and look at the same time. I don't know what this is, but there was so many of those occurrences. And I'm talking to Kathy Martin, Nick Redfern, my local friends, a lot of the investigators I recruited are ghost hunters. They're saying, John, you got some sort of demonic entity in there. The UFO people are telling me this is alien, and when you went to that conference in '99, that was an alien encounter. Those are hybrid kids. The thing standing down the hallway had a square head. It's probably a helmet. And I also, when that all ended, when I laid down, there was like this dim light outside in the windows that got less and less and less. So I don't know, but my encounters with this, and it really went on and on to, they would be banging on the walls. This is a full-blown poltergeist type encounter. And I had a priest come in and he blessed the house and went away for about 6 months. But in talking to him, he didn't believe the devil was a real entity, So I said, this ain't going to work, and it didn't. So this thing, I went through 22 months of every night going to bed and having something poking me in the head. I had a burn mark on my head. I had to go to a dermatologist and have them burn it off. it was just, to me, it was so negative. And so I started comparing, like I had said, the demonic possession, infiltration to alien abductions. And so much of it was an overlap, like I said, 70%. So I look at the alien abduction as being demonic. I look at the hybridization that they talk about, and I don't think it's a good thing. I agree with David Jacobs. It's a negative thing, but I see it as a return of the Nephilim. It's the same thing that these demonic entities, these fallen angels, did. When they saw the women of man and they materialized and were able to mate with them. But what's the goal of all of that? The goal of that is to corrupt the DNA. The same thing you're doing with hybridization, the same thing that the Nephilim did. I just see it as a repeat of the same thing. Now, there's so much more I could say, but the people who don't believe, let's say, the religious side, the creation's true, they don't believe in God, they think I'm nuts, right? But the ghost people I talked to all said, yep, you had a demon in your house. That was not a poltergeist or a ghost. That was a demonic entity. And so the way I got rid of it, I was able to drive it off, calling upon Jesus. You can't say yourself. I would use the name of Jesus, and these things would stop. And I met Joe Jordan. I don't know if you know Joe Jordan.
I think I've interviewed him a while back ago.
Yeah. So Joe Jordan, he went from Florida to South Korea, was the country MUFON person, and he's back in Florida again. He's telling me, John, this is the alien abduction is demonic, and he wrote a book on it. Over 150 cases where people called upon Jesus. So I'm following his advice. I meet this woman out of the blue on a dating site that had demonic encounters at the Catholic school she went to. She's telling me what to do, and it's working. I'm able to repel it by using the name of Jesus. It's really the only way you can repel it is by using a divinity, not yourself, because that's a challenge. But another time, while this is almost over, in April of 16, I go to visit my daughter. I fly back. I sit down and I say, I'm writing a book on this, which I did, I called it, the first book was The Ufologist, The Haunting of John Ventre. And I sit down and I start typing. My yard bursts into flames, literally burst into flames. I got pictures of this. I'm not making it up. So I look, I see three guys. I happen to live next to a cemetery, but I got a stockade fence. I see three guys in the cemetery. I called the police. They said, no, they reported it before you, right? The flames are moving against the wind. They never enter my yard. It's fenced in, chain link in the back. They're on the other side. I counted the poles, 72 feet. It burst into flames. Now, I had put blessed pendants at the four corners of my yard and the four corners of the house, and I believe that's why the fire never entered my yard. Yet it's burning everything on the other side. So after the fire department comes, puts it out, I get a phone call from the mausoleum guy, and he goes, "Oh, how you like your headstone?" I had already ordered my headstone, 6 feet tall, in the shape of the Holy Bible. It says Holy Bible, religious markings and stuff. The minute those three guys installed the 6-foot Bible headstone, the yard burst into flames. That's something demonic entities can do, which is why during exorcisms, they remove all the furniture, the curtains, the rugs, all of that stuff, right? So I write my book on it, and I'm totally convinced. And I think a lot of the cases, a lot of the contact, I don't think they're alien. Travis is alien, but I think the abduction part and this whole hybridization, I think that the demonic answer is just as plausible as anything the ancient alien guys say. And that's a tough thing for people to accept. They don't want to hear that,
That's what our big name professionals we've been chatting with lately are saying, that it used to be just nuts and bolts UFOs. Now it's poltergeists and cryptids and everything you thought was just science fiction.
Hitchhiker
plausible.
effect.
The hitchhiker effect. And that's more poltergeist than alien as well.
I'm glad you're hearing that, because when I started talking about this in 2014 and really in 14, my whole mindset changed, where I was a firm believer, and I gave some of the best Case for UFOs. I mean, I wrote this book here, Case for UFOs. I think it should be a manual for MUFON with all the cases and the history and all of that. But then I started taking a look at the religious view of it, and why, what would, like people say, what would Jesus do? Well, I say, what would Satan do? And I think a lot of this is. So I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one, although that theory had died out for years with John Keel and Ballet. And I think when I came out and started saying it, a lot of other people started listening, and I know with MUFON, the head of the abduction research, the ERT team, Doc Medich, he used to be a field investigator for me. He teaches in his class to the investigators there who do the abduction research. I gave him the markers, and he tells them about my case and how it started at the MUFON symposium, and how the whole thing progressed, and how I was able to repel it, how Joe Jordan has found all these cases that can repel the abduction. So, I'm glad that he's using that, and that's the way I see it. I see it with a different set of eyes now. I'm not the true believer I used to be, but I don't question what the people say, because it did happen. They experienced what they experienced, but we have never been able to explain why or who's doing it on any of these cases,
And that's the thing too about the abduction phenomenon, is that it is strange. Everybody seems to have these different variations of what takes place. There are some common features that or themes that reoccur. But yeah, it is strange, and it is one subject that we haven't really covered much. I know that spirituality is very much coming into play when it comes down to UAPs, like people saying CE5, contact, being more spiritual. People are able to somehow communicate or something with these.
It's the open-mindedness, right?
Right.
Even if you relate that to ancient cultures with sort of your third eye. And I even read an article the other day that the pineal gland, which is quote
I just
unquote
about to say
eye,
that the pineal gland is the third eye.
They found that there's like piezoelectric crystals in that gland. So meaning it could hold a vibration or maybe attract or produce one. So there's a lot more that we think we know that we don't have a clue about.
See this guy standing behind me here?
Yeah.
On my right.
Handsome fellow. Yep.
Yeah. Do you know the first sketch of the gray, how that came about?
No.
1918. Aleister Crowley, the self-professed Antichrist, demon worshiper. He does the ritual of Babylon, and I don't know all the details of it. He conjures up an entity. It's a gray with the big head. It had small eyes, didn't have big eyes, but it was the first gray ever drawn, sketched. So in that book I wrote, I call it now the string theory of the unexplained. And I looked at probably 10 UFO cases, famous ones, and I pointed out all the demonic markers to it and all my explanations and all of that. But I have all of this stuff in the book, all the oddities that point to me more that this is a deception and a trick. So we look at the Pentagon now. All right, why are they telling us? The guys that debunked it for all those years, right? Who ran MK Ultra, and I don't know if you know about the Collins Elite and Operation Orphan and all of that, right? Now the same people are telling us that that UFOs are real. It's a cover story for something else, But Collins Elite was a very interesting. The FBI took a look at Aleister Crowley and JPL, the guy who founded it, Perkins, and Ray Bradbury, and another famous guy. And they were investigating him for demonic occult activity, Aleister Crowley in the US. They then turned it over to the CIA. The CIA forms the Collins Elite, a group of CIA people that investigate the paranormal, and then they started investigating UFOs. Down the road, their conclusion was there are no UFOs, it's all paranormal activity. It comes through a dimension. And I got to agree with that. I don't say 100%. I'm not going to say 100%. then Operation Orphan was we try to harness the powers of the paranormal with MK Ultra, remote viewing. We were trying to figure out where Saddam Hussein was hiding, that type of stuff. So we've done all of these things, and so that's why I say I can't trust the government a whole lot in what they tell you and what their motivation is and what they would do to you.
Yeah.
Just look at cattle mutilations and my labs and that stuff happens. Yeah. These ranchers are losing, 20 head of steer and 10, they're losing thousands of dollars and they see helicopters nearby.
Yeah.
Like one of these bulls are like what, $3,000? I think. Just
there was that one ranch. Was it Lopez or I don't remember the name? He lost like 25 head in one clip. It was the biggest, one that they lost the most steers.
Spontaneous barbecue. That's what would happen after that. Just invite
Yeah,
everybody over. We got a lot of meat.
Invite the whole county over and do a Texas barbecue on that stuff. But my thinking has changed on it. But I don't know. Nick Pope was out here. We did the conference in Philly, and they're telling all these stories. We did a panel, and and I said, well, hold on a second, everybody, before we get too far out there. No life has been found yet in outer space. I believe all the stories, and I think they're interdimensional. But we've only found viruses or bacteria. We have not found any life in space. It just hasn't happened yet. And then, if you read the Christian version, life is only here on this planet, and I said to Michael Heiser, who's a theologian, and he says to me, do you think God's a little God or a big God? And I said, a big God. You think he has a budget? And I said, no. He says, so he created trillions of stars because he could, but he only put life on one. And that very well may be the truth, but there are other dimensions. Heaven's a dimension, hell's a dimension. The physicists say there are 11. So it's us, heaven, and hell. There's still 8 more. And I wonder, does everything evolve around Earth? And there's different dimensions, there's different, maybe there's a dimension where Hitler won, and they've got flying saucers and maybe they're able to come through, but it takes so much energy, they have to just go back. I don't know, because a lot of them seem to just dissipate or they fly away, they're gone, the entities that are encountered, I don't know. But, I'd love there to be Independence Day peaceful where they show up and they tell us the truth, what's going on. But, I've done this 24 years. There's no real proof. I've got my radar and I got my trace evidence. What does it prove? Could have been a government craft. As a matter of fact, that TR3B, the triangular with the 3 lights, matched up exactly to the Denise case. I didn't know about it in 2008, but now I do, and it matched up perfectly. I don't know what the answer is. And there was a guy, what's his name? He put a curse on the field. He was one of the big debunkers. These names have escaped me here. On his deathbed, Philip Klass, right? Philip Klass, Philip Klass. On his deathbed, he said, you will never know any more about UFOs than you know today. On your deathbed, you will ask, are they real? And you will know no more on your deathbed than I know today on my deathbed. And you will never know the answer to UFOs. And I always think about that, because if it's interdimensional, then maybe you can't really get it. You can't grab it. It's like a ghost. They has to dematerialize. It has to go back. I don't know. But it doesn't explain some of the crashes that I think the 1936 one in the Black Forest was good. I think the Travis Walton was good. Or we're just dealing with multiple stuff. I don't know.
Nice.
And I don't think I'm ever going to know.
I think right now it's a mystery for all of us. I think, but that's the fun part of it, is to talk to people like yourselves.
Yeah, I like a good story.
Yeah, and I'm the same, right? And get to look at things from a different angle. And that's really the point of the podcast. We decided that we're going to give everybody a chance to give us, what's your angle on this? What's what's your thoughts on that? Louis, do you have any final questions for our guest today?
No, I just want to give a very special thanks to John. It's been very informative. We'll have to do a part 2 of this because there's so much more knowledge that you've amassed in your career. An hour and change doesn't really do it justice. So
go to my website, johnventre.com. My books are on Kindle and Nook. I actually have 102 lectures I've done at my house in that studio in Pittsburgh, and they're out there. Everything in the UFO and now paranormal stuff, they're all out there for people, and we could talk about almost any subject.
Well, we'll have you back on again one day soon, and we'll dive into some other areas, maybe not UFO related per se, because it is refreshing to get that perspective as well. So
okay,
thanks again, John. We loved having you, man. You're welcome back here anytime.
All right, thank you.